My mother and father raised me with love and understanding. I started before I met to name this thing. The name of this story is Be Careful What You Teach a Child. My mother and father raised me with love and understanding. They taught me many valuable lessons. Unfortunately, valuable lessons are not all children learn from their parents. One of my most vivid memories from about 3 years of age was a lesson about lying that my mother and father taught me inadvertently. I had been told repeatedly that if I lied to them, they would know. To a child, the word of your parents is absolute law. It doesn't even cross your mind to question it. I remember very clearly the day I learned differently. I believe the incident started when, in a fit of anger, I had kicked my mother. I do not remember what it was provoked me to kick my mother, but I do remember that in my very young mind it was justified. My father determined beyond the punishment I had been given, I was to tell my mother I was sorry. The main problem came because I really wasn't sorry. Every time my father asked me if I was sorry, I said no, because it had been drilled into me repeatedly that if I ever lied to my mother and father, they would know. It was also drilled into me that if I was caught lying, I would get a paddling. However, in this instance, every time I said no, I continued to get a paddling. The situation continued until, in flat-out desperation, I finally said I was sorry. This was a lie, and I fully expected to be punished for lying. To my amazement, my father hugged me and told me he was glad I was sorry. Then he sent me in to tell my mother I was sorry. My 3-year-old mind was reeling. I followed the order of my father and told my mother I was sorry. Again, my apology was accepted without question. Suddenly, I came to the realization that neither of them knew I was lying. This was a great revelation, but also a great disappointment, for at that tender young age, I believed I realized that my parents had not been telling me the truth, that they in fact had also been lying all the time. It was not possible for them to know if I was telling the truth or not. This was a great disappointment because before this I had considered my parents the absolute dispenser of truth. Now I knew this was not true. Beyond the disappointment there came anger. While still in the kitchen, I grabbed the most convenient thing to me, which happened to be a chair, and hurled it to the kitchen floor. Of course, this resulted in another spanking, but this time I was not required to say I was sorry. Later in my life, I related the story to my mother and father from a much wiser age of 8. I called it the day they taught me to lie. In retrospect, I realized it was the time I realized I could lie. I think mainly, though, the anger and sadness from it came from the realization that my parents could lie. They revealed their human side, their feet of clay, and removed themselves from the pinnacle of awe and respect they had been to a very young child. The moral of the story is to be careful what you say to a child. Don't hold yourself up so high that when you finally come crashing down, you take the hopes and beliefs of the child with you. No one knows the right thing to say to a child, especially when you're first learning how to be a parent. Try hard not to paint yourself in a corner you can't get out of, because the tracks you leave in the mind of a young child walking away from that corner will last throughout his life. God bless.